is a mixture of fierceness and gentleness. When we think of a bear, we can think of this big, cuddly, funny creature. So he mixes humour with also this danger. You know, if you meet a bear in the wild, I mean, there are different things to do depending on what kind of bear it is. Whether you back away calmly or make a big loud noise, or whichever thing that you do, depending on the kind of bear. But bear is also an animal to be cautious of. So bear has power and strength, but also a kind of cuteness and a kind of humour. We talk about bear hugs. We talk about men being bear of a man, meaning they're strong and they're warm and they're lovable. And a bear hug is a big, awesome hug that makes us feel amazing. So another powerful part of bear symbolism for me, especially connecting to this cave bear bone, which is in my bone oracle, is the hibernation aspect of what bears do. So hibernating in itself is knowing when to retreat, when to take quiet time. And that's about listening to your body, but also listening to the environment around you, because not all bears hibernate. Pandas don't hibernate, and Asiatic bears don't hibernate, and that's because there's no lack of food. The reason that bears hibernate is when there is less food around. And what hibernation is going into a really, really deep state of slowness. They're not completely comatose, but they're asleep. Their heart rate slows down considerably, and they are eating a lot less. However, grizzly bears and black bears, I believe, also, whilst they are hibernating, they are also gestating their cubs. Their cubs are born in the cave, and then for the first months of their nurturing, they are inside the cave. Now, the symbolism of that for me is the concept of gestating whilst dreaming. So, taking hibernation as a sleep state and then a dream state. Bears are creating life whilst in a sleep state. And if you think about that from an artistic point of view, for example, if you go into meditation or dream state, quite a lot of your visions for your creations might come from that state. And sometimes you have to retain that state to manifest the reality of the dream. And then we have another example of how bears need to mix fierceness and gentleness, because once the cub has been born and nurtured in the cave and they come out of the cave, female bears need to defend baby bears against male bears, because male bears will kill cubs, even their own cubs. And I'll talk a little bit more about the symbolism of that a little bit later on in the video. So we have that. Another aspect for me of bear symbolism is that before entering the cave, brown bears especially will gorge themselves on salmon from the salmon run. So they know the right time to go to the river when the salmon are swimming back up the river to spawn, going back to their spawning grounds. Salmon is considered a symbol of wisdom in Irish culture. There are a lot of stories where salmon is considered a fish of wisdom. So in that sense, what bear is doing is consuming wisdom before going into the cave, fattening up. What they do is they fatten themselves up, they store loads of fat on their bodies so that they can hibernate and still be able to feed their babies. So the other thing that bear does, and apparently other animals do this when they're hibernating, if they're the kind of animal that gives birth whilst they're hibernating, if they do not manage to get enough salmon to nurture the zygote, which is a fertilized egg within them. So they have a zygote within them, a fertilized egg, the females. If they have not managed to store enough body fat to carry that baby to fruition and then to nurture them afterwards, the body will reabsorb the zygote. Now, I just think that's amazing for body wisdom. A human body would not do that. A human being can be addicted to heroin, it could be in all sorts of state, malnourished, anything. The baby will still, the zygote will still live in the human body. I don't know what that says about us, but what I think is that in bear, it's an amazing thing that speaks to us of body wisdom. So that's the other part that I find really fascinating about bears is, to me, they symbolize an absolute confidence in body and a weightedness and a groundedness into the ground. The way they have these big wobbly bums and they kind of like shuffle around. They're so very comfortable in their bodies, and those funny poses that we see them in, like flumped with their feet out. They are the epitome of an armchair. They are a living armchair. They don't need armchairs. They are armchairs. And that's why we imagine them being so they're not only comfortable in their own bodies, we also imagine them being comforting. There are so many artistic images of people being enveloped by bears, being held close by bears. And many of us have visions of that. So there are two sides when you're looking at animal wisdom in this way. There are two sides. Now, what I like to do is observe the behavior of the actual animal. When I'm looking at an animal, when an animal comes to me, I look at the behaviors of the animal. So I will study documentaries and I will read, I will look at images of them, but then I will also journey. So my belief is that there is and this is also in other cultures as well, but I ascribe to this belief that there are the actual animals, so there are actual bears living out there in the woods, and there is the spirit bear who we can talk to when we journey. It was Mabon yesterday, well, it's still kind of Mabon today, but I went as part of my ritual on a journey to meet bear, and the bear that I came across was a spirit bear, brother bear, a big male bear, who embodies being a kind of leader, a well-meaning leader, a kind leader, a big, strong, kind, enveloping being who can hold space. Also, I've met the spirit of Mother Bear, who is the same, can hold space, is kind, has a kind of generosity, and can hold you, which is where the depictions came from on the bear talismans that I make that have goddesses on them. And the other aspect of this symbolism that comes through for me, I will need to tell you a little story to explain. So maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I went on one of Carolyn Hillier's weekends. Carolyn Hillier is a witch working in Dartmoor, an incredible musician and artist. She's also made a oracle called the Weaver's Oracle. I went on one of her weekends, which is basically a weekend filled with magic working in circle with other women, and much song singing and drumming. And one of the songs that Carolyn sung whilst I was there, I believe it was called Baron. It was a long time ago now, and it was about, as I remember it, a woman fitting into the skin of a bear. And the image obviously stayed with me because when I came back from this weekend, I had a vision of it. I had a dream, and then an idea for a totem came, and the totem is of a bear with his hands like this holding the figure of a woman. So I made Baron behind me. I called this first totem. It sold instantly, and then I had many requests for more of these. It's the most popular piece that I have, that I've been making in my workshop. So I continued making this piece, and you may have heard me speak about in other videos that the more I repeatedly make a symbol, the more deeply I understand a symbol. It's sometimes something I do as a practice, and sometimes it's just something that happens incidentally. And in this case, it happened incidentally. Through continuously making this piece, I began to consider intellectually why it was so important to women, and I also began to dream about why it was so important to women. They were all women asking me for this symbol. And here's the conclusion I came to. The role of the female bear is to protect the cubs from the male bears. It's in a way a sad fact, but it is the fact of bear life, that female bears must protect cubs from male bears who will kill them. So we live in a time when we are trying to destructure patriarchal thinking. And I don't want to get into a discussion about whether or not that has been a conscious creation. I personally don't see the point in damning what's gone before. I think different ways of thinking evolve. We have thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And I see that what we are working towards now is hopefully a better way of thinking and a better way of structuring things. But if we take the metaphor of the female bear protecting the cubs from the male bear, and we don't think of the male bear as representing necessarily men, actual men in our lives, the men that we love, or our sons, or our co-workers, or whatever. We're talking about patriarchal thinking and the patriarchal mindset. The female bears, which is present in all of us, this symbolically, the female, present in men and women. We are moving towards a time where we hope to protect our young, where we hope to protect the future with a different mindset. And that's what I think is represented in this symbol. The bear is behind the goddess, supporting the goddess. And that isn't to say that men don't have something to contribute. Maybe, and it has been that case, that sometimes that bear behind the goddess is actually a male bear supporting the female bear for different people. And it can be whichever way we prefer. But there's something about supporting that feminine way of perceiving things to come back. Not to negate the male, but supporting that feminine way of coming back, because it's been damned, it's been held down, it's been suppressed, and we need some of it to come back so that we can improve the way that things are. Of their mothers, and they reshape the world with their music. All day they summon the bear. So now we come to the final element, and this connects to the fact that this bone is a fossilized cave bear bone. It was found in the Ural Mountains in Russia and is dated between 40 to 100,000 years old. Cave bears were larger than the bears that we have today. They had shorter noses and were herbivores. They hibernated through the winter, making them easy prey for our Neanderthal ancestors who lived in the same cave networks. The cave bear is what Joseph Campbell, the comparative mythologist, has dubbed the master bear, who was worshipped as the main food source, as is seen in evidence in later hunting peoples. Often the main food source becomes a deity of sorts, worshipped. Evidence of bone offering cults have been found in a series of high mountain grottos where bear skulls have been stored and arranged. These grottos have wonderful names. They are called Wilderkirchli, the Wilderness Chapel, Drakenloch, Dragon's Den, and Wildenmannlichloch, Wild Man's Den. These are all in Switzerland. And Peterschloll, which is in Germany. In Drachenloch, cave bear bones were found along with Paleolithic artefacts. And as the archaeologists excavated further down, therefore further back in time, they also found stone cabinets made of slabs containing cave bear skulls, which were remarkably well preserved. At Wilderkirchley, a Paleolithic workshop was found with stone tables and benches, and big pieces of quartzite lay about, ready to be fashioned into tools, as well as superior axes and other implements of stone and bone. So this workshop was a place for making tools for hunting and for butchering, and this is where the cave bear bones were found, so they were connected. At Wildenman Lischloch, the archaeologist who was responsible for this investigation, whose name was Emil Bachlier, he investigated all of these different caves. What he wrote about Wildenman Lischloch is this: the purposeful collection and arranged preservation of the cave bear skulls and long bones behind dry walls set up along the sides of the caves, and more especially the hermetic sealing away of the skulls, either in crudely built stone cabinets protected by slab coverings or in repositories walled with flagging, allow for no other conclusion, after the realistic consideration of every possibility, but that we have here to do with some sort of bear cult, specifically a bone offering cult, inspired by the mystical thoughts and feelings of an old Paleolithic population, thoughts involving transcendental supersensual ideas. Many ethnological parallels testify to a broad distribution of bone offering cults in this historic period, especially among the hunting peoples of the north. And so it seems we may be confronting here what is truly a first in the Elder Paleolithic, the original offering cult, namely of mankind. The striking, intentionally arranged partial shutting off of Grotto 3 at Drachenloch by a screened fire hearth beneath the entrance, as well as by a large stone cabinet containing skulls which occupied more than half of the width of the chamber, provided evidence enough for the significance both of this area and of the backmost portion of the cave, the most important place for safekeeping, in the deepest darkness of the cavern depth, where not everyone might enter. So we can see cave bears were revered, and their skulls had been protected so that we still have the evidence of them now today. So this cave bear bone, along with all the other symbolism that I've discussed, for me within the context of my bone oracle, also brings this element. It brings that idea of connecting to our deep past, to our Paleolithic ancestors, and to the idea of worshipping specifically the cave bear, but also of worshipping animals, of remembering our animistic beginnings with our spiritual leanings. So to summarize, bear is a mixture of fierceness and gentleness. Bear is grounded, earthy, comfort in the body and body wisdom. Bear knows how to gestate whilst dreaming, meaning bringing something from dream to fruition while staying connected to the dream. And finally, bear was one of our first points of worship, possibly the first. A revered master animal held in high esteem, most likely for both admiration of strength and gratitude that their bodies provided meat and skins to help us survive. These are places to begin from with your own ideas about what bear connects to for you. Our relationships with symbols deepen when we get our own understanding through our own journeys and through our own investigations. This is the meaning for this bone within the context of my bone oracle and within the context of my work. Enjoy your own journey with discovering what bear means to you.
Women are calling upon the forest bear to protect them. They whisper to their drum, they sing the cold word given by world with their music. All day they summon the bear. All night they summon the bear. Will she come? Will she come? Will she come? Will she come? They twist their damn hair into a tight braid in which they wear white stone hair bones, blue stone hair bones, given by sisters of their sisters, and they create a dance of perfect balance. All day they summon the bear. All night they summon the bear. Will she come? Will she come? Will she come? Will she come? They cross the snowfields to where the blue ice pours, where they can find freedom of spirit, which they will carry back to give to daughters of their daughters, and they release the wings inside a woman's heart. All day they summon the bear. All night they summon the bear. Will she come? Will she come? Will she come? Will she come? As the sound draws near, there is a fierce spirit close to the camp, but it's not the forest bear. So strong and magic the women have made. Here comes the ice bear, mighty and raw. It's her fearsome power that answers their song as she encircles them with her claws. Journey from high on the plain when women sing the bear claw song. It's she who protects them now and always. Remember that should you think to do a woman wrong.